July 2018. The Salish Sea, past midnight. A southern resident orca named Tahlequah pushes to the surface, and there on her back, balanced against the current, is the body of her newborn calf. Dead less than an hour after birth, she won't let go. Not that night. Not the next morning. For 17 days and roughly 1,000 miles of open water, she carries her daughter. Boats keep their distance. Researchers write things down. And nobody, honestly, has a word for what they're watching. If that isn't grief, what is it? Okay, here's the assumption most of us carry around without noticing it. Grief belongs to us, only humans. Because grief, we tell ourselves, needs abstract thought. You have to hold "she was here" and "she is gone forever" in the same head at the same time, and feel the weight between them. Animals live in the present. They forget. So they can't miss anyone. Which sounds tidy. Until you've stood in a kitchen and watched a dog wait at the door for someone who isn't coming back. Or watched a cat return, night after night, to the exact chair where someone used to sit, circling it, sniffing the cushion, settling somewhere close, but never quite in it, like the seat itself still belonged to someone else. Something has been shifting in the last 20 years. Field biologists, people who spend their whole careers with elephants, whales, apes, magpies, they keep filing reports that don't fit the tidy version. Behaviors that look, from the outside, exactly like what a widow does, or a mother, or a friend who couldn't be there when the call came. And here's the interesting part. A quiet idea has been growing beside all these reports. Maybe grief doesn't need philosophy at all. Maybe it needs only two things: a bond, and its permanent absence. No language required, no concept of eternity, just the weight of someone who used to be there and isn't. So how do you actually study that? How do you tell a confused animal from a mourning one? You start with someone like Barbara J. King. She's an anthropologist at the College of William and Mary. In 2013, she published a book called How Animals Grieve, and inside it she does something small but really important. She gives us a working definition, not a poetic one, a useful one. Grief, she writes, is a behavioral change following the death of a bonded individual. The survivor eats less, sleeps at odd hours, withdraws, sometimes stays close to the body. That's the observable part. Whether the animal feels what we feel, that door, she leaves open. It's a small definition, but notice what it does. It moves the question away from something unknowable, what's happening inside another mind, and towards something you can actually stand there and watch. Then you meet the elephants. Cynthia Moss has been watching the same families in Amboseli, Kenya, since 1972. And she noticed something nobody was ready to talk about at first. Elephants come back to the bones of their dead. They pick up a jawbone, turn it over slowly with the tip of the trunk, hold it for minutes at a time. And they'll do this to bones of family members 30 years after the death. 30 years. Then there's James Anderson at Kyoto University, who around 2010 gave the whole subject a name. Comparative thanatology. The study of how other animals meet the fact of death. His most quoted case is from Blair Drummond Safari Park in Scotland. An elderly chimpanzee named Pansy was dying. Her adult daughter and two other chimps stayed with her through the last night. They groomed her, they checked her breathing, and when she finally went still, one of them tried, gently, to shake her awake. And it's not just the giants of the animal world. Mark Bickhoff once watched 4 magpies land beside a 5th, dead in the grass by an American road. They laid strips of grass across the body, stood a moment, then flew off. Okay, but here's where a good philosopher would slow us down. Her name is Susana Monsó. She teaches at UNED in Madrid, and in 2024 she published a book called Playing Possum that pushes back against the easy version of this story. Because a moving photograph isn't evidence of a feeling. What if the elephant returning to those bones isn't mourning? What if she's searching, hopelessly, for someone she can't quite locate? What if the magpies dropping grass on that body are doing something we simply can't name? It's a fair pushback. Really fair. But then Monsó does something you don't see coming. She defends a version of the deeper claim, just more carefully. She proposes what she calls the minimal concept of death. The idea that a lot of animals can grasp two simple things about a corpse. That it doesn't work anymore. And that it isn't coming back. Non-functionality. Irreversibility. That's the floor. And it turns out that floor is way lower and way wider than most of us were raised to believe. Which means a surprising range of species might clear that bar without ever grasping mortality the way a philosopher would frame it. No fear of non-existence. No abstract theory of time. Just enough to register that this particular someone is not simply away, that away has quietly turned into something else. Which puts us in a weird spot. The border between understands death and just reacts to it isn't a wall. It's a fog. And you and I, honestly, we're somewhere in that fog too. On the worst days, when the loss is still too fresh for the concept to help. Not because we're unintelligent, because some things resist tidy categories, no matter how sharp the mind holding them. Which brings us to a stream in Tanzania, and a young chimpanzee named Flint. You have to picture Jane Goodall in 1972. Late 30s. Over a decade at Gombe by then, watching one particular chimp family closely enough to know them the way you know your neighbors. The matriarch is Flo. Her son is Flint. And everyone watching them agrees these two are unusually close. Flint was 8.5 years old. By every rule of chimpanzee development, he should have left his mother's side years earlier. He hadn't. He still climbed onto her back sometimes, like a much younger chimp. Still slept in her nest. Some bond between them had quietly refused to loosen. You could see it in the small things. The way Flint still slept pressed against her side even on warm nights. The way he waited for her, feet dangling from a low branch, whenever she wandered off alone to feed. Other juveniles his age were already sleeping solo, foraging solo, testing the kind of independence young chimps are supposed to test. Flint kept circling back to her instead, as if some part of him had decided he wasn't ready to find out what that independence felt like. Then, one August afternoon, Flo died. She was old. She died on the bank of the Gombe stream, and the rest of the troop moved on the way troops do. Flint didn't. Here is what Goodall wrote in her field notes. Flint climbed the tree Flo had last slept in, curled up in the empty nest, then came back down, walked to the exact place on the bank where she had died and sat there. He stopped grooming, stopped playing, stopped mostly eating. 3.5 weeks later, he crawled back into her nest and he died there. Goodall was careful in print. She wrote about compromised immunity, about depression as a possible physiological cascade. As a scientist, she refused to say the simple thing. But she also refused, and this is the part that gets me, to pretend the simple thing hadn't happened. And here's the question I can't stop turning over. We keep asking whether other animals grieve the way we do. What if we've had it backward the whole time? What if we grieve the way they do, and we're the ones who invented, over thousands of years, a vocabulary to try, and mostly fail, to hold it? On day 17 out in the Salish Sea, Tahlequah finally let her calf go. The researchers didn't cheer. Didn't call it closure. There's no closure for the thing they had just watched. They wrote up their notes. They went home. Some of them, according to later interviews, kept the coordinates from that stretch of water saved on their phones for years afterward, for no reason they could fully explain. And most of them, in interviews later, quietly admitted they hadn't been the same since. If you've ever lost someone, go back for a second to the moment you first understood they were gone. Not the phone call, not the announcement. The understanding. Was it words that got you there? Or was it something older than words? A shape of absence that arrived in the room before your language could catch up? Because if grief exists before we have a word for it, inside a whale, inside a chimpanzee, inside a bird standing in the grass next to another bird, then the thing we share with them isn't intelligence. It isn't reason. It's the simpler thing underneath. Older than words.